President Bola Tinubu has welcomed the latest report on the country's trade balance to becoming $1 trillion economy by 2030. He premised this on the recent statistics that showed a 3.46% GDP growth for the third quarter of 2024, July, August, and September. The third quarter report by the National Bureau of Statistics showed that Nigeria's gross domestic product grew by 3.46% compared to 3.19% growth recorded in the second quarter. Big question on the show is how is this latest NBS report shaping the purchasing power of Nigerians? What has been done really in the past 18 months by this administration, and what should Nigerians expect? I'm joined by Special Advisor, Media and Public Communication to President Bola Tinubu. Sunday Dari joins us live from our Abuja studio. Mr. Dari, thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations on your appointment. It's the first time we're talking since then.
Absolutely. Nifemi, thank you so much for having me today.
Glad to have you here. So let's begin with the big one coming from Port Harcourt. After 7 postponements, the PH refinery company has now finally commenced full production. There's a promise of daily supply of about 200 trucks. We're hearing that about 1 million liters of refined products were released by the plant on Tuesday. It's been a long and bumpy road to getting this refinery to run. What specific measures will this government take to ensure long-term sustainability given the rich history behind this?
Thank you very much. I think it's been a long journey, but eventually we have arrived at the destination. And that destination was what happened yesterday in Port Harcourt, the old refinery, 60,000 capacity. And that's what happens when you have a leader who is focused, who has his eye at the tip of the spear, and who will spare nothing to make sure that we achieve. We know that PMS production, local refining, is critical. It forms part of the major component of the oil reforms in the oil industry that the president is about. And having Port Harcourt come on stream, 70% capacity, 60,000 liters per day, and also the other products coming on, I think is significant. And I think that going forward, with Dangote refinery already on, with about 9 other refineries and modular refineries already on in this country, we will achieve a local production of PMS and other byproducts to a level of over 50%. That will help to bring down the prices, but also make this nation be proud of the fact that it just not only has oil, but also it has some level of refining capacity. And that's what we find in other countries that produce oil. You must add some level of value. You must refine your own crude oil locally, and then the people can benefit from it.
70% refining capacity installed as we speak, but the bigger refinery in Eleme, we understand, is yet to be completed. What really is the update with the refinery in Kaduna and Warri, now that the president has reportedly directed that a timeline shouldn't be given?
I think that from the president's reaction yesterday, we are clear on the journey ahead. First is to make sure that the second part that has about 155,000 capacity in Port Harcourt comes on stream as quickly as possible. Of course, there are considerations for Warri, Kaduna, and the others for privatization where it's possible. But if not possible, about 1.5 billion have been paid out about 2 years ago with additional funding that has come in the last 1.5 years to get them activated. And you see, when they're on stream, even if you want to privatize, you have added value and the country can get more. Of course, privatization is in sight, but also getting them active and productive is critical so that the value can increase. But I think the focus right now, as NNPCL said, is to have the second arm of the Port Harcourt refinery. Don't forget, the king of all our refineries is the Port Harcourt refinery. And I think if you get the old one, which is on now, and the newer one comes on, I think that will be a big leap under this administration.
Leave me, the big question on the mind of many Nigerians is how will full production, increase in full production in Port Harcourt refinery, for instance, impact directly on the price of fuel for the consumer? Should Nigerians expect the price of fuel to crash, for instance, in the coming days? Absolutely.
You recall that about 2 weeks ago, under the oil sector reforms, looking at some of the impact we've had, was a prediction that you will see some kind of reduction in the pump price. And in the last 3 days, it was widely reported that the 50 naira closing to 100 naira reduction. But let me tell you what happened today. We saw Dangote Group advertising its PMS at a particular price. That has never happened. Now, the competition that is needed, market forces is forcing competition because NNPCL is producing, Dangote Refinery is producing, the modular refineries are producing, and 9 other refineries are producing. Now, you're going to have the market forces play. For the first time, I saw Dangote Refinery advertising that we have PMS and we sell at this price. So that ultimately will impact the pockets of Nigerians. It's not going to may not be significant in the short run, but absolutely in the long run, it's going to be significant. It's going to obey the laws of demand and supply. Of course, we also know that there's a dollar component of it. But while the dollar component might still be slightly high, the cost of transportation, for instance, in the Port Harcourt region, and also states that are closer to the refineries, will witness significant reduction in the PMS prices, but also it will spread across the country eventually. But I think we've moved from zero refining, to a point where we are almost at 25–30%. And for me, that is progress, and there's a success story in what happened in Port Harcourt yesterday.
Nigerians are counting on that, especially what it means for how much they pay per litre of PMS. Looks like it's a good week for the presidency in the midst of the many criticisms in recent times. The recent GDP growth figures are quite encouraging, growing by 3.46% compared to 3.19% in the second quarter. But what specific policies, Mr. Dare, will government implement this time to sustain this growth and address the country's economic challenges? Because for the average Nigerian, it all boils down to their purchasing power. They're asking, how can they afford buying food this December, for instance?
Well, absolutely. You know, December is a good marker. But I think if you back up a little bit from the onset, the president was clear about the journey ahead. We've had some headwinds when it comes to the Nigerian economy and the numbers, which is also, if you benchmark it against what happens across the world, it's the same headwinds. But every country has to deal with its own peculiarities. And that's why you've seen this president introduce key reforms in about 13 to 14 different sectors. And when, you know, I tell you, it's time to turn the page. We've had 18 months of explaining this. It's time to turn the page in the sense that we'll need to now tell Nigerians and show the impact, the fruits that have been born from these reforms. And it's the collectivity of these reforms that will eventually ease the inflation, that will ease the high cost of living. For instance, you look at the minimum wage. It might not be sufficient, but we've had at least a response from this government. You also look at the number of jobs created for MSMEs alone, 240,000 direct jobs. You look at manufacturing, 75 billion naira for 75 manufacturing companies. More than 21 of them have drawn that money. And so all of these are injection of funds to different sectors of the economy, to the young people, to the small businesses, medium businesses. All of this injection of funds circulates in the economy and improves the volume of trade, the volume of commerce that we have in the economy. And I think there's one singular objective on the part of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to make sure that this economy is revved back again, but also making sure that we have the necessary foundation for us to be able to progress, so that we don't go back and forth when it comes to inflation. The inflation is high right now, but as other elements from fiscal to monetary policies are taking place, as our manufacturing industries crank up and employment numbers also crank up. We've seen in the recent report, it's dropped by 4.6%. It might be minuscule, but then we've seen progress. Every little progress, when it comes to reforms, is not a jump from 0% to 100%. Reforms are progressive, yielding impact and results. And that's why we've decided that we're turning the page. We'll be looking at 13 sectors under the Tinubu reforms tracker. Looking at each of these sectors, we're looking at expected outcomes. We're looking at impacts in the short, medium, and long term, so that Nigerians can really see the numbers and know that the sacrifices being made, the difficulties being faced right now, there is something coming in forms of dividend to show that we're on a journey, and this president is certain about the destination he wants to take the economy of this country.